Some of the hardest parts of living abroad aren't what's said, but what's left unsaid. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the invisible cultural rules that sometimes might leave you feeling misunderstood, uncomfortable, or confused. So let's jump into today's episode. Namaste, Satyaru. Hello, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Crossroads of Culture. I'm so happy to have you here. I'm happy to be back. If you don't know, last week we started doing video episodes of this podcast. So if you want to watch the episode instead of just listen, go ahead and jump over onto YouTube. And if you're here on YouTube, hello, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button, follow, share, and yeah, let's just get into today's episode. As usual, I will be looking at my notes over here for a few things that I want to talk about in today's episode. Like I said at the beginning, we are focusing a little bit on the unspoken rules or things that are communicated that we might not know or be aware of when we come to a new country and we travel to a new country. And as usual, I will be talking. Can you hear those people outside? They're so loud. Why do they always do this? Okay, maybe I'm gonna have to cut this part out. Let's see how loud it is in the end. Okay, they're gone. Okay, so back to what I was saying. Sometimes when you move to another country, there's those unspoken rules that you're not familiar with. And this week, we're talking about those things. As usual, I'm speaking from a perspective of someone who's probably coming from a South Asian country or an Asian country and moving to a Western country. For example, India to the United States or something like that. That's the perspective that I always come from. So, that's what you'll hear today. But of course, these rules and ideas can definitely apply for other people coming from other countries as well, and typically into a Western country. Maybe not the US, maybe, Canada or the UK or somewhere else. But before we jump in, let's do a new segment. This week we have something a little bit different. It's like a game. So hopefully this will be interesting for you. It's kind of a multiple choice quiz style game. So I'm going to call this segment Ke Bhayo, which means in Nepali, what happened or what's happening. So in this segment, we'll unpack those cultural moments and they're the things that leave you saying, Ke Bhayo, what happened? So you'll try to guess these unspoken rules of United States culture. I'll give you the situation and some options, and then you'll have to choose which you think is the most appropriate response. So I'll give you the situation, think about it, and then choose what you think should be the appropriate response in the United States. And we'll see if you can get them right. So here's our first scenario. You're meeting your professor or a new American friend for the first time. You're thinking about bringing a small gift to show respect. What do you think is the best move? A, you bring a box of sweets or something small, such as a thoughtful gesture. B, you show up with flowers, which is a universal sign of kindness. Or C, you don't bring anything. You just come on time and be yourself. So, if you were going to someone's house for the first time, what would you choose to do? What do you think is appropriate? And what do you think is appropriate in the United States? I'll give you a second to think about it. The first one, remember, is bring a box of sweets or something small. The second one is to show up with flowers. And the third one is to not bring anything. Okay, so here's the correct answer. The correct answer is C. Don't bring anything, just show up on time and be yourself. And in most casual or professional situations in America, gifts at the first meeting can feel a little too formal or even awkward. So just being present, on time, and polite is more than enough when you meet for the first time. Did that surprise you? Is that different than your home culture or your home country? Okay, let's jump into the second session or the second scenario. So you're walking into a room where your American teacher is seated. For example, you're going to a class at a university or another educational center. What do you think is the most culturally expected behavior? So we have A, say good morning, sir or ma'am, and stand up until invited to sit down. B, smile and say hey and take your seat. Or C, avoid eye contact until spoken to. Is it A, say good morning, sir or ma'am, and stand up until you're invited to sit? B, smile and say hey and then sit down? Or C, avoid eye contact until spoken to? So the correct answer for this one is B. Most Americans prefer casual greetings, even with teachers or supervisors, your bosses, even in professional settings. Using first names and more informal greetings like hey or hello is usually welcome. It's not a problem. So did that surprise you? Is that different than your home country? Let's jump into the last scenario. So this is scenario number 3, situation number 3. You're in a group discussion and a classmate starts talking openly about their stress and personal challenges. You're surprised. What's going on? Like, why are they sharing so much personal information during a class? Is that appropriate? So, what do you think is the appropriate response or how they're thinking in this situation? A, they're oversharing and probably breaking social norms. Like, that's not usual. That's abnormal to be in this situation. B, they're trying to connect. This is open, this is commonly encouraged. It's normal and, yeah, often encouraged. Or C, they're trying to gain sympathy or attention. Which one do you think is their motivator? The correct answer is actually B. In many American environments, expressing your thoughts and feelings, even in group settings, is a sign of openness and not oversharing. So that might be something that you're familiar with or you've heard a bit, that we are very comfortable sharing our emotions here in the United States, and we can talk about our personal problems, sometimes even to a stranger, depending on your own personality and background and comfort level. But it's not something that's seen as wrong or disrespectful or that you're trying to gain attention or breaking a social norm. It's pretty normal, pretty average. So, did you enjoy this new segment that I have here? Do you want to be featured on the next quiz? You can always DM me your own situations, your own questions of, wait, is that normal in the US? And we might include it in a future episode. So, coming back to the topic, hopefully these examples that were mentioned in this game kind of brought up some ideas and stirred some of those underlying cultural rules or expectations that are familiar in your own culture, but maybe different in another one. So, there are small things that go into this. It's, again, something that's unspoken. So, it's maybe something like tone or body language, personal space, when to be silent, when to speak, who speaks first. All of these things carry different meanings. Even around dinner time, I was thinking about this and who eats first, and whether you eat together as a family, whether are like together at a table or whether you're eating in the living room in front of a TV. It's all kind of not only personal culture, but just the broad social norms, depending on where you're from. So these are all kind of unspoken expectations or rules that can be hidden. You might not be familiar with them when you move to the US. So, like I said, these can be things like eye contact or the certain way that you address people. So, for example, in your home country, just think when you're speaking to someone, how close do you generally stand to them? Do you look at them directly in the eyes when you're talking to them the whole time? Or do you usually stand side by side and talk to them this way? Or do you not look at people when you're talking to them and you're looking around other places? Depending on where you're from, those all mean different things. To us, it's going to mean something different than it does to you. And also titles or how you address people. Do you call people sir or ma'am, like was in our example? Do you call people by their first name? Even in the United States, depending on where you're from, we kind of touched on this in a previous episode, but the northern part of the United States and the southern part have different cultures, and then same with east and west coasts. So in the north, it's a little more common to call people by their first names. Um, Sometimes it really kind of depends on the situation, but it's more common as you get older to call people by their first names, even family members or whoever, not parents necessarily, but like cousins or aunts or uncles. Um, and then in the South, they tend to have a little bit more of like respectful terminology. So saying yes, sir, and yes, ma'am is very encouraged, but you don't hear that so much in the northern part of the US. So in the South, they might say yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. Even as they're getting older, they're adults and speaking to someone who's older than themselves or even their same age, they might say yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. Um, and also, just like saying Mr. and Mrs. in front of a name instead of just their first name or just their last name. So if you're being extra polite, then you might say, for example, my last name is Singh, so Mrs. Singh, you would say. Or you could call me Miss Janessa because that's another way of showing some kind of respect. Through terminology. But in the northern part and in the bigger cities and things like that, it's not very common. So people will probably pick up that you're from the South, not only by your accent, because accent is different, but then also by the vocabulary that you're using and the different titles that you're using for people. So, if you would like to know more practical terms or tools and hear more of this kind of vocabulary and more just explanatory things for you, then there are a few things that I can share with you. First, I'll just give you something here that you can learn from. So, there's this cultural model that I use often in my classes with my English students. If you didn't know, I teach ESL and I also am doing cultural coaching in some of those classes. And so, one of the first cultural things that we talk about is the iceberg model. Maybe this is something you've seen in one of your classes before in university or even in high school. Sometimes they talk about these things, but it's the idea that a culture is like an iceberg. And I'll put a picture on the screen if I can in the video version of this. So if you want to see a picture, make sure you're watching on YouTube. And if not, I'll do my best to describe it to you for those of you who are listening to the audio version on Spotify or wherever you find your podcast. So for this cultural iceberg, you have the top of the iceberg and then you have the depths of the iceberg underneath of the surface of the water. And in the top, you have things that are easily seen, like traditional dress or clothing, language. Those are all like the front-facing things of a culture. It's easy to identify, even accents and things like that. So that's the top part of the iceberg, and then the depths of the iceberg, which is actually the majority of the culture, is underneath, and it has to do more with personal beliefs or religion, values that are held. So these are more internal things versus external things. So digging into that, you can kind of realize what are some of the things that shape a culture on the outside and on the inside. And when you go to a new place, being able to know those things on the front end is really helpful for you to prepare going there. So if you know kind of what the values and the beliefs of the culture are in the predominant religions of the culture, then you'll know what are some of the things that people are living from, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Because even if you don't hold to the religion of the culture, often that worldview and ideology has been there for many hundreds or thousands of years, and it influences the way that people interact with each other, the way that they treat each other. So this is all like under the surface kind of things that happen that might be those unspoken rules or unspoken expectations versus the things that are on the outside that are easy to see, the differences in food or clothing or accent or language or these kind of things. So we dig much more deeply into that in my course, Culturally Confident in 90 Days, which is coming out soon. If you're interested in those things and even more practical tips that are there, not only the why of the culture, like the iceberg model, but also other frameworks that help you to learn more about like the practical tools of those things. What does this mean? Okay, I know the why and what's motivating the people. Now, what are the specific things that I need to know to be able to interact freely within this culture? For example, again, learning about like social distance between people and how to communicate within a culture, whether it's normal to make eye contact or not, whether it's normal to stand to the side or to the front, how far away you should be from that person. All of these like little details of things are really good to know and be prepared and even practice before moving to a new country. And we talk about all of those things and break them down in my course, Culturally Confident in 90 Days. So if you would like to have access to that, then definitely sign up for the waitlist. I have the link down below in this description. And yeah, I would love to have you join us for that course when it comes out. So lastly, I would just like to talk about the mindset portion. I often cover like the practical things and sometimes have fun segments like today, and then also talk about the emotional impact that this topic can have on a person. So sometimes it can be exhausting, feeling like you have to guess what is the right way to kind of approach the culture or show up in the culture. How can you be yourself and then also kind of socially acceptable to the people around you? And depending on which country you're coming from and culture you're coming from and where you're going, kind of depends on how free you can be to kind of express yourself in your most normal way or not. Thankfully, in the United States, we are a very diverse nation, and most people are pretty familiar with meeting people from other places, other backgrounds, worldviews, religious backgrounds. And so there's more freedom here, I would say, to kind of be yourself and show up however you want. But then just understanding how people will probably respond to certain things is really helpful. But then, for example, if I were to go somewhere else, I might have to contain myself in some ways to be socially acceptable in the culture. And I actually don't see that as a bad thing. This might be a controversial topic to some. Some people might think that you shouldn't have to change yourself no matter where you go or what you do. But I believe that it's best to protect relationships and to build good relationships with the people around you. This is kind of what people who are in international relations might do. Diplomats or politicians, they don't just show up however they want in whatever situation just because they're in high standing or they have this certain kind of job description or whatever, but they actually do fit themselves into an acceptable mold for where they are and who they're talking to. And I think that's actually respectful. So even though the United States might have a rap for being very rebellious, independent, people just kind of do what they want and say what they want, my own perception of how to best travel in the world and meet people from different places is to do so in the most respectful way. And the way to do that and build relationships is to be knowledgeable about the culture that you're going to. Don't just show up and expect people to kind of conform to your own worldview or ideas, but understand that other people have different ideas of what life should be like, what a culture should look like, and what's socially acceptable. And it's your responsibility to kind of come into that and be respectful of the people around you and what they believe. So that's my hot take for today. I hope that this gave you some things to think about. If you have any questions or even just like ideas of things in your mind that might be this underlying current of what is socially acceptable or these unspoken rules that we've talked about today. If you have any experiences about something that maybe left you feeling uncomfortable or misunderstood when you had some kind of cross-cultural interaction or you traveled somewhere, or if you have any questions or anything, like I said, feel free. Of course, you can always DM me on Instagram at Janessa_Elise, or you can join our chat on the webpage, and I have that linked below, the Global Network Community. That's the place where like-minded people like you and I can get together and share our thoughts about culture and what it looks like to move from one place to another, or to be culturally relevant and respectful no matter where you're going. And then, of course, like I mentioned before, the waitlist for the Culturally Confident in 90 Days course is linked down below. You can just go to the Substack page, put your email in, and that will get you on the waitlist for this course. Um, and yeah, if you've ever broken one of those unspoken rules and you have a story you'd like to share, you can, like I said, DM that to me. You can join the chat and you can send a voice note of it. We do have options for one-on-one coaching and group coaching. So if you're interested in any of those things, I would love to hear from you. And yeah, until next time, I really hope that you have a great week, that you don't run into too many of these uncomfortable situations. And if you do, that you have people around you to support you, like our global network community. So until then, I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you again next week.